Have you ever had one of those days where, like,
So
Never.
like
But anyway.
1,000 things are happening at once?
Never.
I know, this is one of those days for
I've been
me.
to a couple Teresa thing, and she's
But I am thrilled to be here.
yeah.
We're glad to have you, sir.
And I see Jeff Thompson, and I forgot his paperwork, so I'm gonna get sent to the principal, I'm thinking. All right, well, welcome everybody to the Sarp County and City's Wastewater Agency meeting. Today's February 23rd, 2022. It's 4:01 p.m. We're gonna hold this meeting in accordance with the Nebraska Open Meeting Act rules that are posted on the north wall. Red letter day here, we got 5 mayors. From across Sarpy County, we got the mayor of Springfield, Bob Roseland, the mayor of Gretna, Mike Evans, the mayor of La Vista, Doug Kindig, the mayor of Bellevue, Rusty Hike, and the mayor of Papillion, David Black. I'm Don Kelly, Sarpy County Commissioner. If you would, please silence your cell phones, and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get into the consultant reports, are there any announcements from the mayors today? Dan, anything pressing?
Is that my report here, or?
Well, we'll hold off on that.
Nothing, sir.
I'm going to just throw a quick audible here and arrange the itinerary a little bit. Today we have a guest visitor, a good friend of mine now, Javier Fernandez. He's the CEO of Omaha Public Power District, and he actually came to our county board meeting a few weeks ago, and I think it's great that he's here, mostly to introduce himself to all the mayors. I don't know if you've all had an opportunity to meet him, but Javier is a very impressive guy. He actually came to OPPD, although I hadn't met him until he became the CEO in 2017 as their vice president and chief financial officer. He became the CEO last year when Tim Burke retired. Javier's experience includes the Bonneville Power Administration, the U.S. Department of Energy in Portland. He's been with the Federal Power Marketing Organization since 2012, and most recently having served as Executive Vice President and CFO. Javier also served for 3 years as a Senior Vice President with D.A. Davidson and Company, a financial services firm, and 7 years with Seattle Northwest Securities, where he performed public finance, banking, and financial advisory services, which really, if I could just boil that down, means he's a pretty smart money guy, okay? He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from the Autonomous Technological Institute in Mexico City, a pretty prestigious university. He's got a master's degree in business administration from Yale. I could have went there, but I decided to go to the University of Nebraska. So. He has a utility management certificate from Willamette University and a utility executive certificate from the University of Idaho. In his spare time, he serves on as a board member of several organizations, including the Omaha branch of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, Bellevue University, the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce, and Habitat for Humanity. My pleasure to welcome Javier to address the agency board. Welcome, Javier.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly. Well, that was an impressive introduction. I hope I don't disappoint.
You've got an impressive bio. I have to admit, you really do. So
Well,
thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me, mayors. Again, my name is Javier Fernandez. I'm the president and CEO of the Omaha Public Power District, OPPD. I have a few written remarks. I want to make sure that I don't forget things, so if you allow me, I'll try to read from here. I have been in this position since July of 2021, So just a few short 8 months, although sometimes it feels like 8 years, with storms and all the things that we've had to deal with recently. But it's been a fantastic experience for me leading the organization. I'm here to provide an update on Power with Purpose. That is OPPD's strategic initiative to acquire up to 600 megawatts of utility-scale solar generation and up to 600 megawatts of backup natural gas-fired generation. This project is part of a broader strategic vision called Powering the Future 2050 that moves us towards OPPD's goal to be a net zero carbon production utility by 2050. Now, this is important because we are aiming to do that while maintaining and improving our reliability, our resilience, and our affordability. So there are three legs on this tool. We're trying to improve on our sustainability, on environmentally sensitive aspects of the utility without damaging our reliability, resilience, and affordability. We must be prepared for the most unique storm scenarios, like the ones we had last year, the record windstorm in July of 2021, or the polar vortex that we had in February of 2021. A year ago last week, we were not in a good place. And so each of these events challenged the grid in different ways, and OPPD plans and prepares for each one of these accordingly. Currently, we are engaging in the strategic foresight process to ensure that OPPD has a competitive advantage by assuming a future-ready stance in our generation portfolio. The energy sector will change more in the next 5 years than it has in the past 75 years. That's happening. As you know, we have already begun construction of a major piece of the Power with Purpose project. This is 2 natural gas peaking plants, one Turtle Creek Station at 168th Street on Fairview Road, and Standing Bear Lake Station at 120th Street and Military Road in Omaha. Turtle Creek Station is a 450 megawatt facility that will include 2 simple cycle combustion turbines and support structures for generation as well as a substation for transmission. It'll be used as a peaking or balancing station, which means that it is estimated to be used less than 15% of the time. This is not a baseload generation. It won't be running all the time, but rather we will use it to balance the rest of the grid when we need to balance it. Preliminary grading has begun at Turtle Creek. It began on August 23rd of last year, and it continues into the first quarter of 2022. In September of 2021, OPPD executed a contract with the Zachary Group as the engineering, procuring, and construct vendor, or EPC, for both Turtle Creek and Standing Bear Lake stations. The engineering and procurement phases are in progress, full speed. Planning for the construction phase is underway. Construction is anticipated to commence in April of 2022, so just a couple of months away, maybe a month and a half away. Given the colder weather impact on preliminary grading in the winter months, we've had to move those dates a little bit, but it's coming really soon. In addition to the construction at Turtle Creek and Standing Bear Lake stations, totaling 600 megawatts, we have also secured 81 megawatts of solar in the Utah area in eastern Saunders County. That leaves us with a balance of approximately up to 519 megawatts of solar still needed around the OPPD service territory to complete our Power with Purpose project. Ideally, we would like to have several smaller solar arrays located in diverse geographical locations throughout the service territory, as opposed to having one large solar array all in one location in one county. There's a lot of value in diversity of location. In keeping with that goal, our most talented engineers and related work groups are currently researching potential solar locations throughout the OPPD service territory that are close to transmission. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. That would also support future load growth, that meet geographical and topographical criteria, and would be viable options to recommend to my executive leadership team and ultimately to our board for consideration. So we haven't selected any locations, but we are studying those, and we have a few in mind. This is a fairly lengthy process that also involves engaging outside expertise for their technical analysis of our recommendations. In addition to that research, we must carefully consider and anticipate the cost of the generation interconnection on transmission lines within the Southwest Power Pool. So it's all this generation has to be connected somehow. And it's not just connecting generation to load, but it's looking at all the transmission infrastructure that needs to be improved or upgraded around the service territory. As you know, energy moves at the speed of light, and once you put in energy into the grid, we need to make sure that we have all the infrastructure around that is necessary to support that additional generation. SPP, Southwest Power Pool, is responsible for transmission planning in its geographical footprint, which includes 14 states, including Nebraska. The focus of SPP transmission planning has been on developing solutions to meet the current reliability and economic needs of the system, but also as we look to the future and the transformation of the grid, there is not only just a regional, but a national challenge with significant multi-year backlogs for the interconnection of new generation, regardless of technology. The American economy continues to electrify at a pace that we haven't seen in forever. The number of electrical appliances and vehicles and industry that continues to electrify is really causing a lot of demand, not only to us, but across the nation. So the challenge to build, locate, and place transmission infrastructure is a key focus across the nation. This is a paradigm shift in the way we must plan the grid going forward. And it is challenging the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, their policies that were placed decades ago. It's a new game. OPPD, SPP, and others around the country must work together to solve this challenge, and we are working together. We are at the table in Washington, D.C. with all the different regulatory agencies trying to move policy forward. I think it is important to understand how these projects come to fruition, as there are many key players. While our engineers focus on the best locations around the service territory and develop a sourcing strategy for potential projects, solar developers, private solar developers, are doing the same thing. They currently are and will continue to serve for project sites in the OPPD service territory and across Nebraska. And frankly, they're doing this across the nation. They know utilities like us will continue to issue RFPs, and they're trying to do their homework. These developers work independently from OPPD and often begin their process months or even years in advance of OPPD or other entities issuing an RFP to ensure that by the time we issue an RFP, they have an attractive project to bid. These developers oftentimes sign land options with willing landowners and begin their local regulatory process at the county or city level to advance their projects. This process is enabled by federal law, and it is not controlled by any utility. This development process is also true for wind projects across Nebraska. An important step for these developers to advance their projects is to engage in public meetings to support establishing solar regulations in a city or county, or to secure necessary permits in local jurisdictions. We, OPPD, we often attend these public meetings because it's important. We are part of the community. We need to be present. We usually attend to provide general support of solar projects, share information about technology, location, and needs for the utility, very clearly determining that we are not working with a lot of these solar developers. OPPD does not officially endorse a solar project until there is a contract in place. Once we have a contract in place, then now we start working with that partner and we start developing a project like the one I mentioned earlier that we have in eastern Saunders County. As of today, OPPD has only executed one solar contract in Saunders County for the Power with Purpose project. We don't have any other contracts signed, and we're not working officially with any developer, although you probably hear that they're around and they're trying to do their homework. As OPPD contemplates the best long-term solar projects for the remaining Power with Purpose capacity, there are different considerations that must be factored in the analysis, including but not limited to technical design, reliable operation of the grid, asset management, and overall contract structure. Now, as financial stewards of our customer owners' rates, we have to strategically consider all options to balance the high cost of interconnection upgrades that I mentioned earlier, transmission interconnection, with our mission to provide affordable, reliable, and environmentally sensitive energy service to our customer owners. We select the projects with the best overall value. I'll mention this again. Transmission plays a key role. Location of projects will depend a lot on the transmission infrastructure around them. And we're trying to figure out how do we minimize the volatility of transmission costs and the overall cost of transmission, in addition to figuring out how do we minimize the cost of the generation itself. Since September, I've met with Chairman Kelly several times, and I've really enjoyed getting to know him. I was here in front of the commission a few weeks ago, and I have asked for the opportunity to start anew with Sarp County to collaboratively identify land that may be appropriate for solar while minimizing interference with the county's future land use plans, in this case, the county and all the cities around. We received initial feedback from Chairman Kelly that included the importance of preserving the urban reserve zone within the Wastewater Agency jurisdiction. We take that very seriously. We committed to coming back to Sarp County and to this body as well to have discussions on any preliminary sites identified in Sarp County before moving forward with the process. It is a partnership. You have growth plans, you have goals, we have goals too, and we need to be at the table at the front end of the process. Once we have better details to share, I will contact Chairman Kelly, and we will convene meetings with the county and this agency. I made the commitment, and I make the same commitment to you today, that OPPD will not move forward on any potential project in Sarp County without involving this agency. It is very important. At OPPD, we have 3 core values. We honor our community, we have a passion to serve, and we care about each other. And to me, honoring the community means working with the community, working with other jurisdictions just like yours. I hope that you will consider my commitment to you to move forward together. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today, a new day to build the strong partnerships our communities and our people deserve. I'm happy to take any questions or answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions? I do have one. So, private developers of solar, they go out and, do their due diligence. How are they viewed by public power? Are they viewed as partners or competitors? Because I think they're not doing it because they're 501Cs. I mean, there's obviously a profitability margin, but that profitability margin, won't that drive up your costs too as well, and the cost to the customer ultimately? So how does that relationship work, I guess?
I can speak for OPPD, and most of my answer is probably applicable to public power. But for us, we see them as partners. Most of these private developers are developing, they're looking at building new generation with technology that we don't have expertise on today. So I see them as critical partners for someone who has that expertise developing wind farms or solar farms that we haven't done in our history. It is important for them to come in and share that expertise. I see them as partners. Now, to your point, these are private companies, right? They're not altruistic. They're not here just to contribute to the community, although they do contribute to the community, but they have a profit, right? And it's important for us to acknowledge that there's a profit they want to make. The federal government many years ago established a series of tax credits that are usually taken advantage by private companies who have a tax liability. So I see the partnership with a private developer as a perfect opportunity for OPPD or any other public power entity to access the value that those tax credits provide to a private developer. Otherwise, we would not be eligible to take advantage of those tax credits. So typically what happens is those entities bid projects to us, and they pass through a big portion of that tax benefit in the form of a lower price to us. So rather than seeing them as a competitor, I see them as a partner, especially here in Nebraska, where 100% of our power is provided by public power. So Nebraska is unique in the nation. I think it's perfectly positioned to take advantage of these partnerships without having to worry about competition from someone who may not have the community's best interest at heart.
Yeah, thank you. Questions? Comments?
No, I just appreciate you showing up and communicating. It's a great part of the partnership, so glad you're here.
So Javier, I had little experience with working with some groups that have some land that have been packaging it for these other companies. What I see happening, you've got the old farmers that their grandpa said never sell the ground. Well, this kind of gives them an option to not sell the ground by these leases, which kind of slows down the development as well for a city on those outskirts. So that's kind of the struggle I see. Not so much in Bellevue. I mean, we have some ground that it is going to affect these outlying areas, because I think I've heard anywhere from $600 to $1,000 an acre is what they're packaging these pieces of ground for, which works out to 8 caps. The farmers are making what they would if they were to sell it on the open market on a monthly fee. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. I think it's a concern that not only you share, but I'm looking around and people are shaking heads. And I think this is one of the reasons why it's so important for us to be at the front of all these communications, to share with developers the locations that we're looking into, and for us to work with the counties and with the cities to strategically select locations that would work from a public development perspective. And so that developers don't get too far into a project and do their homework on a project that may not necessarily be attractive for the city, the county, or the utility. So it is important for us to share as much information as we can with developers, very clearly knowing that we're not working with them, that we're not necessarily engaging, but sending enough signals about which regions, which areas of the county we're looking into having these developments so that this doesn't happen. But yeah, I think your point is very well taken, and one that we're trying to mitigate by having more information shared as far in advance as we can.
Sure. Thank you.
So one of the things that has been hammered home many times is the cost of transmission. The increasing costs, the further away from those power need, the greater the cost. I mean, how's that trade-off for the agency board? I mean, you have a 14 or 10 county. How big's your service area?
13 counties.
13 counties, pretty large area of land. I mean, what's the trade-off for distance that you're trying to optimize your transmission costs and reliability?
It's a really hard question to answer because there are a lot of factors that play in here. One is the existing infrastructure we have. We already have quite a bit of transmission infrastructure, substations and transmission lines of different voltages that connect to different generation stations and that connect load, our demand, our population areas. What we do know, and we run many analysis, not only at OPPD but in SPP, we know that there are certain areas that are more beneficial for us to locate generation than others. Why? Because probably the load is closer to that generation, and because we already have existing infrastructure around that would not necessitate as much transmission infrastructure as otherwise would happen. So if we have in one of our 13 counties, just as an example, if we go into a very remote area of our service territory, we may not have existing transmission in there, and the distance to load to the load pockets would be really far. So that would probably necessitate a lot more transmission infrastructure, and then the volatility of the cost would change dramatically. We wouldn't know going in whether a project would be a small investment or a very large investment. when we're selecting locations that are closer to our load, closer to existing infrastructure, and closer to other generation infrastructure, we are eliminating a lot of that volatility. Doesn't mean that the project's going to be free and the transmission is going to be free, but we go in with eyes wide open, and we know we can control the transmission costs a lot better for our customers. So that is a key element in the decision process of selecting.
So I assume that you guys model this pretty frequently. So, I mean, I'm not as familiar with real estate as some folks on the agency board are, but the further away you get from the load requirements, the cheaper the land, correct?
Correct.
So can you model that to see if there's a trade-off that, yeah, it may cost more because we got to put more in transmission infrastructure, but we're acquiring the industrial size acreage necessary to generate the power.
Yep.
A magnitude of order cheaper.
Yes, so all of those factors are included in our analysis.
Okay.
The first time we went out for RFPs, we actually opened it up to areas all around the state, and we actually got bids coming in from the Panhandle, right? And it was really interesting for us to see the cost per megawatt that was bid,
Yes.
and then compare that to the additional transmission infrastructure costs. And once you include all of that in the modeling, that helped us figure out which bids were more attractive than others. But it is certainly, the cost of transmission infrastructure plays a key role in upfront before the RFP and during the RFP and the selection of projects. It's something that has to be part of.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Well, thanks so much for coming down.
Thank you.
I don't know if you've had a chance to sit down with all the mayors individually, but highly encourage that. I know you got a pretty busy job, but they each have a different perspective, I think, that would be helpful for you and your team as you look to provide public power for the metropolitan area.
Certainly, I've had a chance to meet with a few at different social events. I need to schedule a few more meetings, but certainly that's something on my calendar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And I guess I need to say this on the record, because if I don't, it might not happen, but you do owe me a lunch, by the way.
So all the 5 city mayors and Chairman Kevin.
I'm not sure as we're making decisions that you should put that comment on the record.
We'll split the check. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Javier. All right, let's get into to our consultant and staff reports. Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It struck me when you did the introductions that maybe we should have a designated survivor for this meeting, that we've got the heart of government sitting in one place here.
That's right.
I did, all joking, I did send a note to the sheriff that maybe we should have security at future meetings. So, that's just the former cop in me, I guess. But our project is progressing very well. I had the pleasure of actually driving through Mayor Roseland's community, Platteview Road, yesterday, and noticed the big hole on the north and the south side of Platteview Road there, where they're tunneling underneath. We're starting in that area to accommodate the Ag Society and be done with the fair. As I continue to meet with your administrators and representatives, we were talking about and discussing the potential for groundbreaking sometime in April. We've heard the term pipe in the ground. It's kind of been a rallying cry for us. That's probably going to happen before we can get a groundbreaking, but we're looking at a place down in Springfield. We're working with Kathleen and Jeff, Leanne, our comm department, and we'll coordinate with your folks. We think it should be a very noteworthy event when we come out. This is, as we all know, but I don't think everybody realizes the significance of not just the Sarp, but the state of Nebraska. And so hopefully by next month, we'll have a projected agenda for your consideration, a date and a time and a location to go out and celebrate the success that you've all been part of there. More specific to what we're doing any single day, the CMAR process is moving forward. Again, from a very lay term, maybe even for the public, we're building the north-south line right now. That's bid package 1. We're getting proposals, and we have 4 proposals from 4 legitimate companies to build the 9+ miles to the east-west over the Papillion treatment plant. That's what we're looking for bids in the CMAR. you think just this real high level, is to finish this project, to get bids on it, to finish it off in 2024. We did get 4, I think, very good proposals. There's 7 members on the committee, the chair, the vice chair of this agency, Jeff Thompson, Epiphany, Amber Powers, Jerry Webster, I think, Mayor Roseland from your community in there, and we've all done a preliminary grading of the proposals, and at least my analysis, Jeff can confirm, they all look qualified. So we'll probably be interviewing all 4 of them on March 14th, Jeff? Yes. And so I think the plan is to get a recommendation up by the March 23rd meeting to this board to go into a contract negotiation with one of those 4 companies. You got 2 locals, Hawkins and Graham. You've got one from Minnesota, Ames, I believe is their name, and one from Kansas City, Gurney. Again, I think they're all qualified, but generally one rises to the top, as you're aware. And so I think we got a good cross-section of representation from the communities and the agency to vet those out here in the next couple of weeks and get you a recommendation with that. So that concludes my preliminary comments, Mr. Chair.
Questions for Dan? Leanne Ziettlow, HDR.
Somebody was here that was taller than me, which is not hard to do. Thanks, Lisa. Using the same figure that I typically talk to, and as Dan talked about, we do have the Springfield project that's underway. That's the cooling water blowdown and the sanitary line, and that's number 1 on the map. Everything else would be considered for CMAR. So that's all the force mains, the 3 lift stations, and then what we call the ZC3 sanitary sewer that comes down to 63rd and Platteview. So they're all in design, as we've talked about before, quickly going from west to east. Segment 1, we actually submitted 95% plans to the agency review the last couple of weeks. Segment 2 and 3 are between 60 and 95%. So those will be 95% will be coming in the next month. And then segment 4, you've heard me talk about, that's the one on the east end that goes under the levee. We had to have that one done early because we had to do the coordination with the Corps for the 408 permit. So that's actually basically complete. We've actually submitted that to NDE. We got their comments back, fairly minor comments. So that's actually basically on the shelf. And then the lift stations, I think Jeff was up here, talked last month about the early procurement. We're working with him on that. We actually just submitted the 95% plans to the agency for review. And then the ZC3, we actually submitted 95% plans to the agency. We've had the review, so those are basically done as well. So that goes through the force main, the lift stations, and ZC3. Just a couple more items. I talked a little bit about the 408. We have had some discussion back and forth with the 408 part of the Corps. They're about half done with the review. You always wish that they were further along, but at least we know they've got a number of the reviews underway, so that's a good thing. And then the 404 that goes along with it, we've had some back and forth with the person at the Corps that's reviewing that, so good questions, and we feel as though that's progressing. The only other thing I know Dan talked about, CMAR, we're assisting Jeff and Dan in the CMAR process. And then we've been assisting Steve Jensen with what we're calling the Phase 1B efforts. So that basically concludes what we've been doing this month. And as we finish up the plans, just like with ZC3 and Segment 4, we're basically putting those on hold until we get the CMAR figured out. But it sounds like if the interviews are next month and potentially in front of you, the end of next month, that should really start us on that schedule.
Questions for Leanne? Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Charlsen, Husch Blackwell.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly. I don't have to talk about SRF loans anymore.
Other than to say,
I didn't say we got it. we did that last month. So since we last saw each other, I did not do any loan drafting. Our primary efforts have been focused on land rights acquisition. We'll visit about one of those here in a bit, and then big picture in the coming months. Another piece that's going to get pretty active is the land use side, growth management plan. We're working with helping Steve Jensen and Jeff Thompson work on, and with the administrators on building in exception processes, make things a little easier now that we've kind of been doing this for a couple of years, and we're seeing some common themes come up that could be probably more quickly handled that would help your teams and developments in your jurisdictions. And then the CMAR coming up here in the next month. We'll be working with the team on that, on contract negotiations there for whoever comes out on top. Any questions for me?
Questions for Adam? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us right into the regular agenda here. Item number 1 is meeting minutes from our January 26, 22 meeting. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the minutes.
Second, Bellevue.
Okay, motion by Sarp, second by Bellevue. Discussion on the minutes. Please vote.
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't there. So
Okay.
whatever I have
You
to do.
abstained, and then Mayor. Oh, it's not coming up on yours? You want to just give me a voice vote?
Yes.
There we are. Okay.
Yeas 5, abstain, Mayor Kindig.
Okay, item number 2 is update on financial statement and claims reports. Phil Green, Agency Treasurer. Hi, Phil.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. Just wanted to take an opportunity to kind of address you a little bit. There's some minor changes that are coming up on the financial statements, and wanted to explain those a little bit to you, and talk a little bit about the claims report that we submit to you each month, and then answer any questions that you may have on that. So as I said, there's changes coming, and they kind of put themselves into 3 different categories. The first set of changes are changes that are being required because of the loan agreement that we now have with NDEE. One of the things that they required us to do is to take our general regular checking account and kind of subdivide it into 4 separate little sub-accounts. And those are up here on the screen for you. So they wanted us to put together an operations and maintenance account, which would contain basically all the funds that we would need to do our normal activities throughout the year. Now, keep in mind, the original loan agreement's a 30-year loan, and so they kind of wrote the language in anticipation of what it might look like several years down the road when income is coming in, and the first pot, if you will, that we can set some of that money into would be this operations and maintenance. Since we're fairly flush with cash up front right now, what I've done is put all the amount that we need for the rest of the fiscal year in our normal operations and maintenance into that account, and then we draw down from that particular line item. So you'll notice in the balance sheet going forward that that particular line item is going to get a little bit smaller and smaller throughout the rest of the fiscal year. The anticipation then would be when we roll into a new fiscal year come July, we'll set aside as much money as we need for the whole year for operations and maintenance, and that gives you a much better idea of what we are dealing with as kind of an excess. The second account is then the loan repayment account, and this would be both for the original $5 million planning loan as well as the new ongoing loan that we have moving forward. Now, obviously, the new loan that we've got, we're not going to have to make any payments on until we've actually gotten up and started operations. But the $5 million planning loan, we will start making our first payment on later this fiscal year. So in June of this year, we have one payment, so you'll see that amount sitting in that account as well. There's actually a third one called the county repayment amount, which is in case we ever had to borrow money from the county to help make any of our monthly payments. Then as soon as we would have some excess cash, we should put it in there. Normally that's going to be zero. In fact, it won't even show up on your balance sheet unless there's anything in there. And then the largest amount is called surplus. And surplus really is everything else. Now, surplus is important for you to understand because it's kind of the cash flow account that we're going to be using as we go forward with construction. So every month when we pay our normal pay estimate for the contractor and engineering costs that are directly associated with construction, they'll come out of that surplus. When we draw it down from the state's loan, it'll go back into that surplus account. And so you'll see that balance kind of go up and down. So ultimately, on the balance sheet, and I'll show you an example of that in a second, you really want to look for the total down below, and that actually is our checking account balance going forward. So that's one change. The other one is just the realization that as we start tapping into this state loan, you'll see another line then showing up on that long-term liabilities that will be the construction loan. So here on your screen is just an example of what's on the current balance sheet. You can see the yellow highlighted area that breaks out the operations and maintenance loan and that surplus amount. And again, that operations and maintenance will continue to go down throughout the fiscal year. Once we make that loan payment in June, that would zero out. Actually, I put 110% of what's required in each of those just to give us a little bit of buffer. It's a good budgeting tool to be able to use. And then that rest is in that surplus line item. So that's really the cash that we've got to deal with. And again, like I said, during construction, we'll be using that as kind of the drawdown. And then when we get money from the state, it'll go back into that account. Below that orange line then is just an example of the long-term liability section that shows the current $5 million loan that we've got. That 10.9 prepayment that was made from Gemini that we hope to be starting to tap into here relatively soon and start getting some reimbursements from, that will decrease. But as we draw down from the state, you'll see a number that will continue to increase. And again, just a reminder to you, we're not going to look healthy for several years as we're borrowing and not have a lot of money in the bank. So that number is going to be going up as we go forward with the loan. So that's the first set of changes. Second set of changes are some suggestions that came from our auditors. For local governments, we operate budgetarily on a cash basis, but we also operate in real terms with an accrual basis. And we hadn't been doing that very much, and the accountants really would like us to move forward with that. And so you're going to see some numbers beginning to increase both in accounts receivables and accounts payables. The receivables has been a really difficult issue to deal with, and it had to deal a lot with the accountants this year. Keep in mind, from our rules and regulations, we collect right now connection fees, and those connection fees are earned in two different ways. One is when a final plat is approved. So for the square footage of that final plat, there's a certain dollar amount that's now owed to the agency, and that's owed to us at the time the final plat is approved. But it's your jurisdictions that are approving those, that you collect the funds. Eventually, you send those funds then to the sewer agency. So it could be weeks, if not even maybe months, until we actually see those dollar amounts. Well, in the past, I didn't even really know when those monies would be coming. They all of a sudden showed up in our account, or we received a check. I went and deposited it. Life was good. They said, no, you need to start recording that as a receivable, the date that it was approved, and then show when it actually was received in. So going forward, now that we've got an employee on staff, I'm going to be bugging Jeff more and more, and he'll be kind of helping to keep track of all the development that's taking place in your jurisdictions. So we'll actually record it as a receivable once it's approved by your jurisdictions, and then we'll record it once the cash gets to us. On the payables side, we've kind of been functioning more, again, from a cash basis standpoint. So every month, all of our consultants would obviously send us an invoice. We would present those to you in our claims report, but some of those would be dated early in the month that you're receiving them. Some consultants choose to use the last day of the previous month as the date. We've always just put it in the month that it's coming before you, but again, the accountants are saying, no, it really should be the date that's on the actual invoice. And so occasionally you'll see some that show up as a payable, even though it's going to be in the current month's payments. So don't be surprised when you start seeing those starting in March. The last big change that I wanted to bring to your attention is simply the claims report itself. And this beauty has grown to be a monster over the last several months. When we first started out, it's always been just an Excel spreadsheet that was put together, first by myself, and then when we ended up hiring an accountant firm to help with that process, then they were doing the spreadsheet. But what that meant was we were doubling up basically on all that data entry, trying to put it not only in QuickBooks, but also then on the spreadsheet. That was fine when we were doing 5 or 6 payments throughout the month, but we've, seen that consistently grow. Now we've got an employee, so there's twice a month payroll. We've got construction contracts going on, so it was just getting much more complicated. What we are presenting to you now and going forward is a new style of claims report, which is generated straight from QuickBooks. So it's really easy for me just to enter in the dates that we want the report to come out. It actually shows you more detail than what you really were getting on that previous spreadsheet. It just looks a little bit different. I'd encourage you to take the time, though, to look through that. It's going to list invoices. It'll show payroll, transfer from our various accounts, general journal entries, because we've prepaid now some insurance, and so that's a prepaid amount that's on the balance sheet, but then we'll draw down from that each month with these journal entries. So I do have one quick example from the claims report that, again, is in your packet right now. You'll notice the date range also gives me the flexibility to actually go right after the previous month's meeting. There usually is a second payroll that's at the end of the month, oftentimes occurs after your monthly meeting, and so we'll be able to pick up that payroll in the claims account for the next one. You see a lot more detail that's listed under the memo and description, as well as the accounts, so you can see a little bit more detail there. And then finally, below the orange line here is just an example that one of the things you'll see is when we get invoices in, we're having the accountants enter those as they come in now. That'll be one entry, and then when the check is actually cut, you'll see the second entry and the transaction that goes back and forth between accounts payables. So just wanted to explain a little bit about what's going on, answer any questions that you may have on some of the financial reports.
Do we need to approve the,
That'll be the next item. This is really more just a discussion.
but item 3?
Yeah, will be the actual
agency
claims
approval.
report for the month.
Okay. Any questions for Phil? Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the claims report, February 23rd, 2022. Anything to add, Phil?
I'll make a motion to approve.
A motion by La Vista, second by Springfield. Discussion? Please vote.
Mayor Kindig, are you able to vote?
I'm not getting anything coming up on my screen.
You want to give me a voice vote?
Yes.
And me also, yes.
Okay, it came up now. It shows me the results, just didn't allow me to vote.
Yeas 6, nays none, motion carried.
Because we're pushing that button from over here, Mayor.
What?
That's because we're pushing the green button from our chairs.
Probably a good idea.
Item 4 is Resolution 6, granting an exception under the agency's growth management plan and rates and fees policies in connection with the property commonly known as 16031 South 63rd Street, Papillion. Jeff Thompson, agency project.
Chairman Kelly, agency member, mayors, thank you. Jeff Thompson, agency project engineer. We had an exception request come before us through Sarp County's planning department for a single-family residential home located on roughly the fringe of ZC5. In reviewing the application, there were several items that seemed to kind of straddle our GMP policy, but when we reviewed it and talked through it with our consultants, it appeared that one guiding principle of our GMP policy stood out, and it was the fact that it was intended to preserve suburban growth areas, and in this particular case, the properties doesn't have road frontage. It's surrounded by multiple residential estates in that area, and we felt it was appropriate at a staff level to make a recommendation for approval to this board. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I would just add, Mr. Chair and member mayors, that I was not part of the submission, went from planning to Jeff, nor was I part of the discussion until the recommendation came up and reviewed it, just to avoid a conflict as the Sarp agency guy. So it's Jeff and Steve Jensen were the reviewers.
Correct.
So just for understanding for future, we can administratively approve these, correct?
Well, there's stipulations in the growth management policy. If it's a currently platted lot that was platted prior to the agency's creation, we can approve those administratively. And in fact, we just approved one today for Sarp County as well. In this particular case, these are tax lots. They weren't platted lots. If you consolidate the acreage of the two, they were roughly that 20-acre parcel, so they don't have to pay the per acre lot fee. So we felt it was probably appropriate to bring this to the board and ask for your consideration on it. But there are circumstances that will allow them to be approved administratively.
Mayor Hike, you ask a very good question. We're having those discussions as agency administrators. I will just tell you, I am very reluctant to administratively approve anything, simply because there are so many stakeholders. But that really is creating a cog for some people when it is very ministerial, as the one was. But we're going through that review, and we'll bring it back up to you for real clarity on what would be allowed administratively. But I want to make sure that what's there, that before I did it, I'd share it with all the administrators and the board. But because of the monthly meetings is what's creating complication. So yeah, answer your question. Yes, we can do it. We're looking at some expansion with parameters on that, working with all the cities to make a better government.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, sir.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion by Papillion, second by Bellevue. Discussion? Please vote.
Mine was 4.
Oh,
It switched right when I hit it.
Oh, okay.
From my second to against.
so yours is 4, and then Mayor Kindig, are you able to vote?
It just came up. Did you get it?
Yep, I got it.
Okay.
Maybe the agency should donate some of that 10% float Phil has in the operations fund for an operating computer system.
Yea, 6, nays, none, motion carried.
Item 5 is Resolution 7, allowing proposals from OPPD for the electricity service to our lift station properties. Jeff Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly. Jeff Thompson, Agency Project Engineer. What we have before you this afternoon, as you may recall, looking at Leanne's diagram, we have 3 lift stations that are spread out across the county to service the force main system. Several of those locations don't have the necessary power in order to provide the mechanical equipment, the power service needed. So what we're asking for here is to enter into contracts with OPPD to extend the primary service to service those sites. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Jeff? Motion, please.
Motion, Bellevue.
Second.
Motion by Bellevue, second by La Vista. Discussion? Please vote.
And Mayor Kindig,
Yes.
Mayor Roseland,
Yes.
yea, 6, nays, none, motion carried.
Am I missing something, Mike?
Okay, item 6, Resolution 8, approving professional services proposals by RJN Group. Jeff.
Chairman Kelly, again, Jeff Thompson, Project Engineer for the agency. What we have before you this afternoon on this particular item is a service contract with RJN Group. They're a firm that does engineering and actual construction, operation, and maintenance of flow meters. They were actually turned to the agency by one of our agency members to look at providing some level of, a higher level of certainty with the flow meter situation that we're looking. All the agency members will be billed off of these flow meters, and they felt it was appropriate to engage a third party outside of HDR to look at that and make sure from an operational perspective it made good sense, and we were tracking flows as accurately as possible. So this is an hourly not to exceed contract, no more than $20,000, and we would only engage them on a review basis from what HDR is providing us at this point. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Jeff?
Are they the only business that does that?
I don't know if they're the only, but I know they come very highly recommended by one of the agency partners, and they were highly supported by another. So we certainly could go out and solicit proposals, but I know there's a couple agency members that have worked with them in the past, and we're extremely pleased with the service that they provided.
Okay. If it was anything above $20,000, I would probably ask for proposals, but we will spend $20,000 trying to get those proposals, so. Okay.
Is that what you get used in the city? 20?
No, it'd be lower than that, to be
What is,
honest. but-
10?
Same.
I mean, our administration has the right to spend $5,000 without council approval.
But it's
But,
good transparency.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. I don't know, what do we use in the county, Dan? Do you remember?
It's 20.
20, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, La Vista moved and seconded by Gretna. Discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yay, 6, nays none, motion carried.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Going to call a quick audible here and skip down to agenda item number 9. And for the protection of the public interest, I'm going to move that we go into executive session to discuss real estate.
Second, Bellevue.
Motion by Sarpy, second by Bellevue to go into executive session. Discussion? No, we don't have a poll.
You should have one.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
It's weird. Why would it not show up right here?
Yay, 6, nays none, motion carried.
I'm not techie enough to figure it out.
Okay, it's now 4:57. We're going to go into executive session where our discussion will be restricted to real estate.
Go check.
No, you stay. The guy in the blue, I don't know who that is. You'll have to leave. Yes, sir.
decisions piss me off. Or if I'm
Can you hear us, Lisa?
envious of the landowner knowing that he's got his demo over there.
Good. Okay, it's now 5:03. At 4:57, we went into executive session where our discussion was restricted to real estate. I need a motion to return to the regular session.
So moved. Bellevue?
Second.
Motion by Bellevue, second by Papillion. Discussion? Please vote.
Yes. Oh, now I am feeling picked on a little bit here.
Yeas, 6, nays, none, motion carried.
Okay, last item is item 7, Resolution 9, authorizing the agency board and chair and vice chair to execute a land rights purchase agreement and related instruments for certain tracts of land owned by WM Farms Incorporated. Adam.
Thank you, Chairman Kelly. We ask that the board approve this resolution authorizing the agency to enter into a purchase contract for some right-of-way land rights. It's 2 easements for a total purchase price not to exceed $6,025. Any questions?
Motion to approve?
Motion by La Vista, second by Springfield. Discussion? Please vote.
Yes.
Mayor Kindiger, yes. Mayor Roseland?
Yes.
Yeas, 6, nays, none, motion carried.
Okay, the next meeting of the agency is March 23rd, 2022, and all agenda items having been addressed as published, the Sarp County and City's Wastewater Agency Board is adjourned.
Good job.